Do you need to add a zipper to a dress that didn't have one before? Not quite sure how to tackle that? Well, I have just done that very thing, and I'm about to show you every step of the way. So let's go. Okay, here's the dress that we have to add the zipper to. So the zipper will start here, and it needs to come down through the waist seam. The waist seam has elastic. I'm going to show you the inside. Okay, so the zipper will start here, and it'll need to come through this elastic. We do have a seam here for the back. So normally I would want to have the lining and the outer both be sewn to the zipper tape separately so that there was no raw edge on the inside. We're not going to be able to do that with this dress because the outer layer is transparent. So if we had that zipper in between the lining and the outer, it would be fine up here in the bodice. You would see it, but it would be okay because it would just be a little seam allowance, but it would not be okay down past the waist seam because this is the back of the dress and it's transparent and you would see that zipper just sticking out here. So we can't do it the way that we would normally do it. We have to treat all three of these layers as one, and we have to pretend it's just a one layer thing without a lining and just attach the zipper to the outside, and there's going to be seam allowances on the inside. So that is how I'm going to do it. So let's go back to the outside. So before I make any cuts, I'm going to stitch a line that goes straight down through all layers, and then I'm going to stitch another line just so everything is where it should be for these three layers to be stuck to each other. After I make those two lines, then I'll make the cut. We'll cut right through this, and then we'll just install the zipper to the outside. What I'm going to do first is put some pins so that this is all laying how it should. It wants to move around in there. We're just going to have to make it find its flat center, and then we're going to pin it down and stitch through it. Okay, so here we can see the back seam in there. So I'm going to, instead of cutting, once I get through there, I will rip open that seam, probably. But I will have to cut through these top layers, so let's see here, maybe I should do that first. I'll go ahead and rip that open. Okay, now I'm just gonna pin the outer two layers so that I can stitch on either side before cutting into this. Okay, before I stitch or cut, I'm going to draw a line and make sure that everything's straight. So what I'm going to do is measure from the side seams. So I'm going to look at where I think the center is by just eyeballing it with this ruler down from the top. So I think the center is right here. I'm just going to mark that with this needle I have sitting here. Okay, so now to verify that, I'm going to measure from the side seams and see if it's the same. Okay, so this is about 6.5 inches from that side. Okay, perfect. 6.5 inches to the other, so that's great. That's the center. Okay, so now I'm going to draw a line that comes through that center point, through this center point, and then down. She wants the zipper to extend at least 5.5 inches below the waistline. So that would be right here at this 20-inch marking. So I'm going to start the line there. I'm going to open a new one of these pencils. I love these. Taylor's pencils. It's a click pencil. It's like a mechanical pencil, but it's like an oil crayon. But it erases. So these are on our website. I'll link that below. This is my new favorite marking thing. Okay, so let's just draw a line. We're starting at this 20. I'm going to do a little slashy thing to the side so I know that it's supposed to be the end of the line. And we don't have to make this a super dark line, just enough that we can see it. I'm going to do this stitch on a basting stitch, so I'm going to turn my stitch length all the way up. I'm also going to take off the compartment so I have the free arm of the machine. Okay, now I'm just going to look for my line, and I'm going to stitch to the right of it, and then I'm going to stitch to the left of it. Our two lines of stitching on the bodice portion. So this is what you should have, and then we will cut right down the middle. But before we do that, we have to do the same thing below the waist. Okay, so here are my two lines I just sewed, and I'm going to be cutting down the middle of those two lines. But I only went on the bodice. Down here is the skirt portion. So I did rip this away from the bodice. So I ripped that seam open. So I guess what I need to do is actually stitch this opened seam to these two top layers, and then I'll be able to clearly see where to cut, and then we'll also cut through this elastic. And we'll want to secure that first so it doesn't just go in there and get lost. It looks like actually it has stitching through it, so it should be okay. Okay, so I just flipped the dress inside out. There are my stitches that are going through the bodice. Here's the opened seam below the bodice. So I'm just going to move these seam allowances and kind of open them up here, just so I can visualize where that center really should be. If we're moving down from the line, I started here, and then I used this pin to mark the center right there, that one. So that's where the center needs to be. So I'm going to lay each of these, and it will go past the center, but where we're stitching is actually going to be a visual continuation of this one here and also this one here. So I'm going to let the seam allowance come over. And just stick a couple pins in here, making sure this is all nice and flat. And this right here is our center. So I'll do this piece first, and then I'll move that out of the way and do this side. Okay, I'm ready to go here, and I have some pins keeping all 3 layers together. I have transferred this vertical pin to indicate my center line. So I'm just going to sew a line that starts here and just comes to the right of the center and then comes down. Now I'm going to fold this seam allowance out of the way, the one we just sewed, so that I can fold the other side down. And we're going to place a few pins here. And right in between these 2 stitching lines will be the center. So where I'm going to be aiming to have my line be is an extension of this line. So it's going to come right down through here. So I'm just going to pin that down. And just keep pinning down from there. So when I go to sew, I'm going to be feeling for this ridge that was where the other one is folded back, and then right in here is going to be where we cut. So then I'm going to envision just a little space between that ridge, just about the space that this is. This is what we're going for. Just another stitch here, and then when we open up, we'll have a little space between to cut. Okay, this one I'm starting from the bottom up, so this is the bottom of that center back seam. So I'm going to just lift this pin so I can see. Okay, here's the old ridge. I'm going to put that back down. I can feel it there. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch a little bit to the right of that, maybe 1/8 of an inch, starting with the back stitch. And now I'm just using that ridge as my guide. just moving those seam allowances out of the sides so I don't cut the lining, because we already opened that seam. We're just cutting through these top 2 layers. Alright, now we need to iron the zipper a little bit. On the tape, definitely on a lower setting. And then also, to help us in the next step, we're going to be actually rolling these teeth open so we can stitch in that groove. So you can take your iron right now and prepare it a little bit by pressing that open now. This cut edge is going to be stitched to the edge of our zipper tape, but before I do that I would like to re-secure these, because this will get folded in like that and everything, but I just don't want it to come open as I'm trying to sew it down. This one's a little worse. So I'm just going to take these and hold them back down and just stitch right here to put those back together. Now we can pin the zipper in. So starting at the top, this is where my zipper will start, then it continues up and has this little closure, and this part of the back is open. So this is where the zipper will start. So I'm at this side of the dress, so I'm going to get my zipper, and I have it right side up right now. You can tell by the pole. Okay, so it's right side up. Now I'm going to flip it over. Don't need that side. It's lined up with the nylon thing at the top. Now I'm going to fold the little extra bit of tape out of the way that direction, so we can envision once we stitch in this little roll and then we flip and look at the right side, here's how it's going to look. And then just work your way down. Okay, when you're installing a zipper and you have any type of waist seam or anything that needs to line up on the other side of the zipper, that is a place you should start. So I'm going to take this and make sure it's lined up there where it needs to be so it's even with the other side. And I'm just going to put a pin in that. So now from this side I have this waist marked 1, and that's good. So then we'll just go up from there and keep pinning. And down from there as well. And you'll see my seam allowances are not great. The only thing that I really care about here is that my new line of stitching is to the right of this basting stitch. So I'm just arranging the teeth to be to the right of that. And so there's that little line I'm going to stitch on, and I want that to be to the right of that basting stitch. Everything else over here doesn't really matter. We can trim it off. So the last thing we need to do is just take these little zipper tape ends and we just need to fold them to the other side like that. And then you can secure them with some hand stitches, or you could do it on the machine if you can hide it well enough. Okay, I'm just going to secure the little zipper tape ends down. So here's the top, and I'm just going to fold it like that. You can even give it a second fold if you want that to look even more clean, which you know I do. And now I'm just going to take a few stitches that only go through the lining so that you don't see that from the front side. So there we have it, friends. This is how you install an invisible zipper to a dress that did not have one before. I hope that was helpful for you. If it was, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss out on a future video. We put a video out every Monday on all kinds of different sewing topics. And thank you so much again just for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Happy sewing. And thank you so much again just for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Happy sewing.